Hi guys, in this video I will compare obesity to slavery, because when we hear about slavery we immediately think about a slave in the field working hard from dawn to sunset, being physically, emotionally and mentally abused by his master, right? But every plantation that had field slaves also had house slaves. Both of them could not escape slavery. However, they shared different feelings about their master. When the field slave hated the master and wished for his death, the house slave loved his master and would do anything for him. Obesity is a classical house slavery, and as such, none of the three parties involved wants to change it. The master, referring to the food corporations, and the government, who's supposed to protect us, are working together. And the overweight person doesn't even know he's a house slave until he's obese. And at that point, it's almost impossible for obese to escape the slavery. Today, science, especially neuroscience, with the help of digital imaging technology, knows about addictions more than ever before. The conclusions of many of the studies suggested political involvement to stop the increasing rate of obesity. However, the government's plan to reduce obesity failed to treat or stop the pandemic disease. In 2017, the Department of Reproductive Medicine from the University of California in San Diego acknowledged the health consequences obesity has on female reproductive organs. They were also concerned about the growing health costs treating them. The experts believe they know what causes obesity and how to treat it. However, they don't think we can do it. The question is, who are the we that the experts refer to? In their opinion, what causes to reinforce obesity on our society are lack of individual willpower, the will of society to enact changes, and willingness of the public to accept them. And of course, they conclude their concern with the obvious solution that was never applied. The experts know that the best promising strategy is education, so individuals could make responsible choices about their lifestyle. But does education should be provided before the overweight become obese, or after society accepts the enact changes? And if the majority of our society are overweight or obese, why they shouldn't welcome the necessary changes with open arms? And by the way, what is the meaning of the will of society to enact changes? Who is in our society imposes changes if not our government? So why our government doesn't constitute new laws to help cut down obesity, just like they did with tobacco? It seems like for at least 15 years, the National Institute on Drug Abuse has the knowledge to educate the public about addictions. However, they are holding it from educational program for treating obesity and addiction to nicotine. Obesity is also known to be addiction to certain foods. Those foods are acting like drugs, causing people to do something against their free will, thus influencing their behavior and enslaving them into reusing the drug, nicotine or sugar over and over throughout the day until they are addicted to it. You can ask any obese or addict to nicotine if they feel enslaved to their addiction, and they will confirm it. Therefore, the inevitable question is why the master doesn't want to release the slaves, and why the slaves don't want to run for freedom even if they can do it at any time. The answer is both sides are afraid because they are mutually depend on one another. You see, The master cannot continue running profitable corporation without the slaves continually and uncontrollably buying the drug. And the slaves have no knowledge how to free themselves from addiction to the drug provided to them by the master. Look, in traditional slavery on a plantation, there were always two kinds of slaves, the field slave and the house slave. Both of them could not escape their slavery. However, in the case of obesity, the masters created a sophisticated captive mechanism where two things had happened. Number one, the drug became legal for human consumption without any limit. Therefore, it would be known as food and not as drug. Number two was bribing our government to act like the three monkeys every time a new study shows the negative health consequences of using the drug over a long period of time. Therefore, until today, there are no warning labels on foods containing the drug, and even sales tax is not charged on it like on nicotine and alcohol, thus making the drug irresistibly cheap to buy. And the results of it? Overweight and obese people peacefully become house slaves without the ability or reason to escape for freedom. In the phenomenon of obesity, there are only house slaves, where they keep supporting their master with their hard-earned money and making him wealthy, while he is destroying their body and health, causing them to die prematurely after years of suffering from crippling diseases. In the past 60 years, obesity rate rose from 10% to over 30% of adults in the US. Today, we can witness 3 living generations of house slaves, where the children, parents, and grandparents are overweight or obese. The fact is that most overweight people try a number of times to reduce their weight. They try different diets and even pay a lot of money, but all of them failed. Diets don't fail because they cannot help to lose weight, but because there is a missing information about how to handle life without the drug. That's the reason there are cravings to the drug even months after losing weight. And when those cravings coming during trigger times, most likely that is when relapse occurs. When someone tries to lose weight many times without success, at the end, out of frustration, he will gain it back. Then, out of the agony and miseries of life, he will start using more of the drug and eventually become obese. At this point, life is not worth living without the drug. In the beginning, obesity was a disease of the affluent. Because of the sedentary lifestyle and their financial ability to buy more food than they could eat. However, today we can clearly see that all of us can be affected, regardless to the level of income or education. That is because from the 1980s, the drug became very cheap to produce and was added to thousands of food products. The drug that causes obesity, like all other drugs, doesn't distinguish between genders, race, age, religion, level of income, or education. Obese fear to live without the drug, and they also believe they cannot achieve a lifelong change. This way of thinking resembles the slave's fear and belief that they cannot live without his master. In both cases, it happened because the slaves didn't have a leader to show them the way to freedom. And in the case of obesity, the government doesn't seem to care. Because it doesn't matter if obese are slaves of the house or the field, they are still slaves to exploit until the last day. Now, the food containing the drugs are available to everyone and everywhere who shop for food. However, not everyone is overweight or obese. So in the next video, I'm going to show you who are the people that most likely have the tendency to become obese. You may be surprised because, as you can see, it's not about socioeconomic condition or level of education, right? And I will see you very soon. Bye.